The first thing you should know before you take my job at Lockhart Point Lighthouse is that some ships out there aren't looking for safety. They're looking for someone. My name's Daniel Cole. 3 months ago, I was sleeping in the cab of my rusted '97 Ford pickup, parked behind a greasy 24-hour diner off Route 9. The kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt pennies and the waitress calls you hun without looking up from her crossword. I used to have a real life, steady work in construction, a wife, a home. Then, 2 years ago, my back gave out during a roofing job. Doctor said the injury would heal with time, but time costs money, and I had neither. The bills piled up. My wife got tired of living with a man who winced every time he bent over. She left, taking our daughter Emily with her. Judge said I could see Emily on weekends if I had a stable job and a safe place for her to stay. That "if" hung over me like a noose. I tried everything. Temp work, delivery gigs, hauling scrap metal. It was never enough. The nights were the worst. Alone in that truck, staring through the windshield at the streetlight, knowing Emily was growing up without me. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, I saw it. A printed ad, taped crooked to the diner's bulletin board. Overnight keeper needed. Lockhart Point Lighthouse. $1,200 our week. Housing provided. Must follow all rules. The pay was absurd. The location, 30 miles from the nearest town, made no sense. And the must follow all rules line. It felt like bait. But when you're broke, lonely, and desperate enough to claw your way back into your kid's life, you stop asking the right questions. I tore down the ad, stuffed it into my jacket pocket, and dialed the number at the bottom. The man who picked up the phone called himself Captain Harlan. His voice was deep and deliberate, like every word had to be pulled through seawater before it reached me. He asked where I was calling from, when I could meet, and whether I had reliable transportation. Not once did he ask about my work history. We met the next day, just before sunset. Lockhart Point Lighthouse stood on the farthest finger of land, a jagged spit of rock stabbing into the Atlantic. The drive out was nothing but pine forest and twisting asphalt. No signs, no guardrails, just the occasional glimpse of gray water between the trees. When I pulled up, I saw the tower, whitewashed stone, maybe 80 feet tall, the paint peeling like dead skin. The light at the top was dark. Beside it sat a squat keeper's house with a slate roof and a chimney coughing a thin thread of smoke. Captain Harlan was waiting by the door. He was tall, wiry, with skin the color of old rope and a face carved into sharp angles by the wind. His coat looked older than both of us combined, salt-stained and patched at the elbows. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Pale gray, like polished stones on the bottom of a tide pool. We shook hands. His grip was cool and dry. "Daniel Cole," he said, almost to himself, as if tasting the name. Then, without preamble, "Can you follow orders without asking why?" It was such a strange question, I almost laughed. But I thought of Emily, of the truck, of the court's if. "Yes," I said. He didn't smile, just reached into his coat and pulled out a laminated card. The edges were worn, like it had been carried in his pocket for years. "Memorize these. Burn it before your first shift." The card had 7 short sentences printed in block letters. The rules of Lockhart Point Lighthouse. "Arrive at exactly 11:45 p.m. The door will be unlocked. Not earlier, not later. Light the lamp at midnight sharp. Do not look out to sea while doing so. If you hear someone knocking from inside the walls, do not answer. Between 1 and 2 a.m., a ship will pass. Do not signal it back, no matter what it says. If the light turns blue, go below deck and close the curtains until it turns white again. Always leave before the first sign of dawn. Never look back. Never go down the spiral stairs to the door marked with a red X. I looked up from the card. This some kind of hazing? Harlan's expression didn't change. If you can't follow them, walk away now. The wind shifted, carrying the salt-thick smell of the ocean. I thought of that $1,200 a week. I thought of Emily's face when I told her we could have our own place again. I can follow them, I said. Harlan nodded once, like we'd just signed a contract neither of us needed to put on paper. Your shift starts tomorrow night. Be on time. Don't test me on that. The next night I arrived at 11:45 sharp. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. The keeper's house was dark, but the lighthouse door stood ajar, swaying slightly with the wind. Inside, the smell hit me first. Damp stone, oil, and something faintly metallic, like rusted chains. The spiral staircase rose ahead, its steps worn smooth by 100 years of boots. I climbed slowly, my hand trailing along the cool iron railing. Every few turns, the walls groaned, as if the stones were shifting against each other. At the top, the lamp sat in its great glass cage, an old Fresnel lens that looked more like a crystal cathedral than a piece of machinery. My watch read 11:59. I reached for the brass lever. Midnight clicked over. I pulled. The lamp flared to life in a burst of warm white light, flooding the room. It wasn't harsh, but it seemed to push back the darkness outside like a solid wall. I remembered Rule 2, do not look out to sea while doing so. So I kept my eyes fixed on the floor, even when the wind outside seemed to carry voices, low, stretched whispers, just out of range of understanding. At 1:15 a.m., it started, a faint tapping, like knuckles against wood. I froze, trying to place it. It wasn't coming from the door or the stairs. It was coming from the walls themselves, deep inside the stone. Tap, tap, tap. Then a pause. Then a voice. It was right next to my ear, clear as day. Daniel. I gripped the railing until my knuckles went white. Rule 3 burned in my brain. Do not answer. The voice came again, softer, almost coaxing. It's me, Emily. For half a second, my resolve cracked. The sound was perfect, her tone, her breath, but she was 30 miles away, sleeping at her mother's house. I shut my eyes, jaw clenched, and waited. The tapping slowed. The voice faded. Night 2, I learned what Rule 4 was for. Around 1 a.m., a black shape emerged from the darkness. At first I thought it was a shadow, but as it drew closer, I saw sails, enormous pale sails glowing faintly in the light. The ship was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Long, low, with a prow carved into the shape of something that might have been human once, but its face was wrong. A man stood on deck, waving one arm, his other hand cupped around his mouth as he shouted something I couldn't make out. I raised my hand out of reflex, and then stopped cold. Rule 4, do not signal it back. I forced my hand down. The ship glided on. And then, like a candle snuffed out, it was gone. 1 second it was there, the next, nothing but waves. By the third night, I'd gotten comfortable enough to think I knew the routine. That's when the light turned blue. It didn't fade into it. It snapped from white to an icy, unnatural blue that made my skin crawl. The air went thick, pressing against my chest. My ears popped like I was diving underwater. I didn't hesitate. I bolted down the stairs, found the curtains below deck, and yanked them shut. I stood in the dark, counting my breaths, until the pressure in the air lifted. When I went back up, the light was white again. Any normal man would have quit after the third night. The tapping in the walls, the ghost ship, the blue light that made the air feel like it was crushing me. It all screamed leave. But Harlan's envelopes of cash came every Friday, thick enough to weigh down my pocket, enough to pay Emily's tuition for the whole semester, cover her dance lessons, even start saving for a real apartment. For the first time in years, I was sending her more than a birthday card and a 20. I was providing. That's what kept me here. That's why I told myself the rules weren't that bad, just part of the job. Then came the night I broke one. It was 3:04 a.m. The wind had died, leaving the night too still, too quiet. I was halfway through my round when I heard it, soft, wet sobbing, just beyond the balcony door. Every muscle in me went rigid. It was her, Emily. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice ragged. "Daddy, help me." I knew it wasn't possible. She was 30 miles away, asleep in her mother's house. But the sound, it was perfect. The way her voice dipped when she was scared, the hitch in her breath. Before I realized it, I'd unlatched the balcony door. The sea was gone. In its place stretched a blackness so deep it hurt to look at. Floating in that black were faces, dozens, maybe hundreds, pale and still, just beyond the edge of the light. All of them staring at me. Emily's voice came again, from everywhere at once. "Please, Daddy. Please." My foot moved toward the railing. That's when a hand clamped onto my shoulder. I spun around. Harlan stood there, his expression unreadable. "You've been seen now," he said. His tone was flat, but his eyes, there was something like pity in them. "They'll want you." Before I could speak, he pressed a heavy brass compass into my palm. It was warm, too warm for metal in this cold. "This will keep them off you for a while," he said. "But you'll have to make a choice before the week is out." "What choice?" My voice cracked. Harlan didn't answer. He just turned and descended the stairs, leaving me alone with the light, the blackness, and the faces. 2 nights later, I learned what happens when someone ignores the rules. It was 2:45 a.m. I was halfway down the stairs to check the oil gauge when a metallic clang echoed from below. The sound came from the door with the red X. Rule 7. A moment later, it slammed open so hard the walls shook. A man I'd never seen before staggered out. Mid-30s, wearing a rain slicker, eyes wide and glassy. He was gasping like he'd run a mile underwater. "We have to leave," he choked out. "Right now." He sprinted toward the stairs, boots pounding against the metal steps. That's when I saw it. Something followed him. It moved slowly, but it didn't need speed. Its shape shifted as it climbed. One moment a hunched, too thin silhouette, the next a tangle of jointless limbs, then something headless, with a wet, sucking sound that made my stomach twist. The man's foot caught on the last step. He fell forward, scrambling to get up. An arm, if you could call it that, uncoiled from the thing and wrapped around his waist. He didn't scream for long. One sharp yank, and he was gone, pulled back through the red X doorway. The door swung shut behind them with a sound that felt final, like a vault locking. I stood frozen, gripping the railing so hard the metal bit into my palms. My compass was in my pocket, warm and pulsing, but I didn't dare touch it. Footsteps creaked above me. Harlan appeared at the top of the stairs, looking down at me. "Now you know," he said simply. I wanted to ask who that man was, how he got in, why he went through the door. But the look in Harlan's eyes told me he wouldn't answer, or worse, that I didn't want to know. I've been here 49 nights now. The compass never leaves my pocket. It's heavy in a way that has nothing to do with weight. Some nights I swear it's warmer, pulsing like it has a heartbeat of its own. I've started dreaming of the Black Sea. In the dreams, the faces drift closer. Some press right up against the edge of the light, their mouths opening and closing like fish. And behind them, something bigger moves. Too deep to see, but I feel it watching me. I think I understand the choice Harlan meant. One night soon, the light will turn blue, and it won't go white again. When that happens, I'll have two options: step out into that blackness myself, or find someone else to take my place. The thought of quitting crosses my mind every morning as I drive home, but deep down, I know if I leave, they'll come looking for me, and when they find me, they'll find Emily too. So I keep the lamp lit, for the dead, for Emily, and for as long as I can, for myself. That's the end of my story, for now, but I can feel the tide turning. The Black Sea is patient, the faces are patient, and patience, out here, is just another kind of hunger. The ocean is calm tonight. Too calm. The compass in my pocket feels heavier, warmer, like it's counting down to something. Out there, just beyond the light, I can see the faces again. They're closer than before. They don't blink. They don't move. They just wait. And maybe, one night soon, they'll stop waiting. If you've made it this far, hit that like button so more people hear the warning. Subscribe so you'll know when the next story reaches shore. And tell me in the comments, if you were in my place, would you step into the blackness or find someone else to take your place?